Good morning, my friends. Today I'm going to show you how I make beef shank in a Dutch oven. So beef shank, in my opinion, is a really underrated cut. It's often a lot cheaper than things like steak, and so it's a really good option. It is filled with connective tissue and collagen, so cooking it low and slow is really the best way to cook it, or else it'll be really tough. Beef shank is also often called osso buco, and it has a bone in the middle like this, and as you can see, there's some bone marrow in there. And you're definitely gonna wanna make sure to eat that or use the broth that the slow cook makes so that you don't let that precious bone marrow go to waste. But this recipe can also be used with the crock pots. Personally, I prefer the Dutch oven because it retains heat a lot better, and I also learned that crock pots can leach toxins into the food when cooking with them, and so that's why I prefer the Dutch oven. But you can follow this recipe just the same way and use a crock pot. Anyways, if you don't have a good local source for grass-fed beef, then Oak Pastures or Northstar Bison has beef shank, and they're some of my favorite farms to source meats from. And I will put the link to anything that I use in this video in the description below. Also, just a heads up to my carnivore friends, in this video I am going to use some herbs like onion and garlic. Those are things that I've recently added back into my diet. You don't have to use those. If you're a strict carnivore just doing meat and salt, just omit anything in this recipe except for meat and salt, and it will still turn out great. I cooked that way for 1.5 years. I've made beef shank that way, and it still tastes great. So first I'm heating up my Dutch oven on the stovetop on medium-high heat, and I'm just gonna add about a tablespoon of beef tallow. Then sear both sides of the beef shank for about 2 minutes each side until it has a nice golden crust on the outside. Searing beforehand will help to enhance the flavor of the beef as it slow cooks. These are good to go, all done. Have a nice sear on the edges. I'm going to take them out, and then I'm going to saute some onions in the same pan. Add in a bit more tallow and then saute your onions in the Dutch oven. You can add in garlic as well, and it'll just add more flavor to the meat. Before I start braising the meat, I like to scoop out the bone marrow, and this is kind of what it looks like. It'll still be pretty raw after this year. I honestly just eat it that way, but you can also roast it further, or you can use it to cook with. I put it with the egg casserole that I was eating for breakfast this morning, and it was delicious. Then put your shank back into the Dutch oven with your onions and garlic, and add in about 2 cups of filtered water. And then after that, I like to add in a dash of apple cider vinegar. That's also optional. And lastly, I just add a bay leaf on the top. That actually adds a really nice flavor. So if you tolerate it, I definitely recommend it. Then all you gotta do is put the lid on your Dutch oven and simmer it on low on your stovetop for about 6 to 8 hours, depending on how hot your stovetop runs. Just keep an eye on it after about 4 or 5 hours, and once it's fall apart tender, then you'll know that the meat is ready. If it's still tough, then just keep cooking it for longer. I like to put it on my cutting board and then use a fork to just kind of shred up the meats. It should fall apart just like this. This was delicious, and look at all the collagen and gelatin in the shank. It tastes so good. On the outside of the shank, there's this layer of collagen actually. It's not fat, it's kind of a noodle-like texture, and it's actually one of my favorite parts. Make sure to save the braising liquid from your beef shank. So I typically just drink this. It's called meat stock, and I will keep it in my fridge and just drink it. I use a fine mesh strainer to kind of strain out the big pieces in the dish. You can also cook with it if you like. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. If you try it out, let me know how it goes in the comments down below. And make sure to subscribe and follow along, and I will see you guys again very soon.